The Futility of Protest by S.T. Wickett. It is the great myth of liberal democracy that the voice of the people is amplified when they congregate. That all we need to do in order to tell the ruling class what's what is to gather together and protest, that they will listen, that they will care. I've written this piece with two sets of protests in mind. These two will shatter the carefully constructed ruse that power, held by the people, is the driving mechanism of democracy. One changed life as we know it, and the other will be a footnote, condemned to be forgotten in a decade and doomed to never see its own vision. Why? It's simple. The success or failure of a protest movement is predetermined. The regime, with its instruments of power in the middle management, human resources, media, education and policing, has the ability to make the good bad and the bad good. It will editorialize, alter language, gaslight, and if necessary, lie outright to protect its interests. This is a regime that will resort immediately to destruction, without a second thought. It won't kill you, it'll just ruin your life. It is permissive to its friends and ruthless to its enemies. 2020 saw the most widespread political violence in America for a generation. Rioting, arson, looting, attacks on police and federal property. Dozens killed, statues torn down, American flags burned, and an autonomous zone declared. Yet the only thing we were told by the instruments of non-governmental power was that this was peaceful, an earnest rebellion against a cruel system, in the civilly disobedient tradition of Gandhi. And now, a year later, it is but a memory. The self-given label of mostly peaceful was evidently not true. What is true is that despite the carnage and wanton criminality, the Black Lives Matter movement and the social justice movement as a whole has been a resounding success. Its language entered common parlance at an unprecedented speed, and its underlying philosophy is taught to children in schools as if it were objective truth. In many areas, its demands were met immediately and without question. Its message was deafeningly echoed by celebrities, politicians and athletes alike. Contrast that with the response to the Capitol siege, an event which, while uncivilized and disturbing, did not bring about anywhere close to the same level of destruction and chaos as the summer riots. It did not endure as long, it did not enjoy the approval of the established cultural and intellectual order. Consider the gulf in police action here in the UK between BLM events and anti-lockdown protests. Two images come to mind: officers kneeling and officers throwing an old man to the ground. Protest and street activism is not a universally available tactic. The progressive cause is in cultural ascendancy, cultural dominance, and thus owns the machines of information. They own the narrative and the jewel in the crown, the White House. In this imbalance of narrative power, the truth is irrelevant, and nuance is a nuisance. Another disparity which betrays the inherent problem is the risk of catching and spreading COVID at a protest. Of course, a Trump rally, an anti-lockdown march, or a Stop the Steal protest is a super spreader event, with a typhoid Mary under every red hat. Meanwhile, leading public health experts declared protests on the other side of the coin to be perfectly safe and above board. As it was humorously put, systemic racism is the real public health risk. As the title of this polemic states, for conservatives, reactionaries, lockdown skeptics, and dare I say it, anti-vaxxers, protest is futile. If you fall foul of the machine of information, you do not have freedom of speech, press, or assembly. You will be slandered without shame or the burden of proof. You will be labelled a domestic terrorist or a threat to public safety. Again, this is not a coincidence. So, what can we do? We have to be brave. but also prudent. Stand your ground without needlessly martyring yourself. If you are a dissident, then walking around with a shirt or a sign that loudly proclaims your dissidence will get you nowhere but 6 feet under. Figuratively. There are steps we can take to resist the ceaseless authoritarian trend of progressivism without being mercilessly crushed. Start small groups and gatekeep the hell out of them. Hold clandestine meetings for the discussion and proliferation of ideas. Slowly introduce apolitical or apathetic friends to alternative viewpoints. Form strong and covalent communities, but whatever you do, do not go out and protest. Thank you for listening to this Bournbrook essay. You can read our print issues and online articles at bournbrookmag.com, and you can support Bournbrook at bournbrookmag.com/subscribe.